What is the most resilient parasite?
What Mr. Cobb is trying to say.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold in the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate.
Cobb isn't describing persuasion, he's describing infection. We've all heard the "what if reality is fake" question. Inception goes one level deeper and scarier. What if your thoughts aren't even yours? Because here's what most people miss. This film isn't just about planting ideas in someone's mind. It's a blueprint for how ideas behave like viruses, how they spread, stick, redefine reality, and eventually destroy it. And the proof is everywhere, in the parasite metaphor Cobb uses, in the emotional manipulation the team deploys, in Mal's tragic descent when a single seed grows into a reality-killing delusion. We're going to break down the virus mechanics step by step, how ideas spread through emotion, not logic, why the mind can't detect foreign thoughts if they feel self-generated, how the simplest seed grows into identity, and finally, the real inception, the one idea this film plants in you. You might think this is just a cool line from a heist movie, but it's actually the blueprint for every major tragedy in the film, and the reason you leave the theater questioning your own reality. Because Inception is literally a movie about inception happening to you. Let's start with what Cobb actually says. Not the Hollywood version, the biological one.
What is the most resilient parasite? Idea.
He doesn't say the most powerful thought or the best argument. He says parasite. That word choice isn't poetic, it's diagnostic. A parasite doesn't ask permission, it doesn't debate, it doesn't care if you agree with it. It finds a host, embeds itself, and survives by using your resources to replicate. And once it's inside, you can't negotiate with it. You can't vote it out. You can't reason your way free. That's the framework Inception operates on. The film treats your mind like an ecosystem that can be invaded.
Resilient, highly contagious.
Think about what makes a virus dangerous. It's not complexity. It's durability and spread. The common cold isn't sophisticated, but it survives because it's insanely good at jumping hosts and resisting elimination. Ideas work the same way. The ones that stick aren't necessarily true or useful. They're the ones built to survive scrutiny, to replicate through retelling, to resist being unthought. And here's the terrifying part.
Once an idea has taken hold in the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate.
You can't unlearn something. You can't unhear a song stuck in your head. You can't unsee an optical illusion once someone explains it. The mind doesn't have a delete button. It only has layers. You can bury an idea, suppress it, argue against it, but the structure remains. It's in there, dormant, waiting. Inception isn't about changing someone's mind. It's about introducing a self-replicating thought pattern that the host can't remove, even if they wanted to. The film treats the mind like a host, not a temple, and that reframing changes everything. But if ideas spread like viruses, what's the transmission method? Inception gives a brutal answer: emotion. Here's where the film reveals its dark secret. Logic doesn't plant ideas. Feeling does. Cobb explains it explicitly.
Subconscious is motivated by emotion, right? Not reason.
This isn't a minor detail. It's the entire operational manual. If you're trying to change someone's reality, facts are useless. Arguments bounce off. Data gets filtered through existing beliefs. But emotion bypasses the defenses entirely. Think about how the team approaches Fisher. They don't build a PowerPoint presentation explaining why his father secretly loved him. They don't present evidence or construct a rational case. Instead, they engineer a sequence of emotional experiences. Betrayal by Browning, the discovery of a secret will, a deathbed reconciliation that never happened.
We need to find a way to translate this into an emotional concept.
That's the formula. You don't argue someone into a new belief. You make them feel their way into it. You create an emotional need, then position the idea as the answer. The strongest ideas aren't the ones backed by evidence. They're the ones that satisfy an emotional hunger. This is why propaganda works, why conspiracy theories spread, why brand loyalty exists. The ideas that stick aren't necessarily true. They're the ones that feel right, the ones that resolve an emotional tension or validate something you already wanted to believe. Inception isn't convincing, it's conditioning. You convert an idea into an emotional need, and the target does the rest of the work for you. Now here's where it turns dark. If emotion is the delivery system, then how do you even know what thoughts are yours? This is the question that keeps the entire film tense. Can you actually fool someone into thinking a planted idea is their own? Arthur says no.
The subject's mind can always trace the genesis of the idea. True inspiration's impossible to fake.
On the surface, that sounds reassuring. Your mind has defenses. It can detect foreign objects. You know the difference between your authentic thoughts and someone else's suggestion, right? Except Cobb immediately shuts that down.
It's not true.
And that two-word response is where free will starts to crack. Because here's the trap. Arthur's right that the mind rejects foreign ideas. If something feels imposed from outside, you resist it. Your defenses activate. But what if the idea doesn't feel foreign? What if it feels like it came from you? That's the entire game. Inception doesn't work by overpowering your thoughts. It works by making the planted seed indistinguishable from your own inspiration. Think about your own mind for a second. How many of your beliefs can you actually trace back to a moment of origin? Your political views, your taste in music, your fear of failure? Where did those come from? Did you consciously choose them, or did they just arrive? Did someone plant them, or did you cultivate them yourself? You can't always tell, and that's the point. The trick isn't forcing someone to accept a foreign idea. The trick is making the idea feel self-generated. If it feels like your realization, your epiphany, your conclusion, then it doesn't matter where it actually came from. Your mind will defend it as if it was always yours. This is the film's most disturbing insight. The line between inspiration and manipulation isn't clear. It's blurry, maybe non-existent. So what happens when the seed isn't planted in a target, but in someone you love? That's where the virus metaphor stops being theoretical. This is where the film stops being a heist thriller and becomes a tragedy about the consequences of infection. Because Cobb didn't just plant an idea in a corporate executive, he planted one in his wife, and it didn't just change her perspective, it destroyed her entire world.
The smallest idea, such as, your world is not real.
That's what Mal says. Not a complex philosophical argument, not a multi-layered conspiracy. Just 5 words. Your world is not real. And those 5 words grew into a conviction so absolute that it overrode everything else. Her love for Cobb, her children, her survival instinct. The idea didn't coexist with her other beliefs. It replaced them. It became the lens through which she interpreted everything. This is the virus at full strength. Not just influencing behavior, rewriting the operating system. Here's what makes Mal's descent so horrifying. She wasn't irrational. She was perfectly rational within the framework of her infected belief. If this world isn't real, then jumping off a building isn't suicide. It's waking up. If your husband is still trapped in a dream, then threatening to frame him for murder isn't cruelty. It's rescue.
The seed that we plant in this man's mind will grow into an idea. This idea will define him.
Cobb knows this because he's already seen it happen. He watched a single seed redefine Mal's entire reality. And the film's darkest truth lives here. Once an idea rewrites your definition of reality, facts can't save you. You can't reason someone out of a worldview by presenting evidence, because the worldview determines what counts as evidence. If someone believes they're in a simulation, every proof you offer gets filtered through that belief. Of course you'd say that. You're part of the simulation. Mal isn't the villain of this story. She's the cautionary tale. She's what happens when the virus wins, when a planted idea grows so deep that it becomes indistinguishable from identity itself. This is the film's emotional thesis. The most dangerous virus idea is the one that redefines what reality even is. And here's the part most people miss. The team doesn't plant complex ideas. They plant simple ones that grow on their own. So if you're going to inception someone, what does the seed actually look like? The answer is counterintuitive. You don't plant a detailed instruction manual. You don't engineer an elaborate belief system. You plant something simple and let the target's mind do the heavy lifting.
Inception's not about being specific.
That's Cobb explaining the paradox. The more detailed your planted idea, the easier it is to detect. The more you try to control the outcome, the more foreign it feels. Specificity creates resistance, but simplicity slips past the defenses.
You need the simplest version of the idea in order for it to grow naturally.
Look at what they plant in Fisher. My father didn't want me to be him. That's it. Not a business strategy, not a detailed plan for dismantling his empire. Just one emotional reframe about his relationship with his father. And from that single seed, Fisher generates everything else himself. He decides to split up the company. He interprets his father's coldness as protection rather than rejection. He constructs an entire counter-narrative to his life, all from one simple emotional pivot.
If you're going to perform Inception, you need imagination.
But here's the key. It's not your imagination doing the work. It's theirs. The target's mind takes the seed and cultivates it, branches it, integrates it into their existing belief structure. The idea doesn't feel planted because they're the ones growing it. This is the blueprint hidden inside the story. The film is showing you the mechanics of memetics, propaganda, and self-deception without ever calling it that. Think about how real-world influence works. Cults don't hand you a rulebook on day one. They plant a simple seed. You're special, or the system is broken, or trust your feelings. From there, you build the rest. Advertising doesn't lecture, it plants. You deserve better, or everyone else has one. Political movements don't begin with policy papers. They begin with, they don't respect you, or this isn't America anymore. The simpler the seed, the harder it is to detect, because it looks like your own thought. And once it's growing, you defend it as fiercely as any belief you consciously chose. Which brings us to the final twist. What's the one idea the film plants in you? So here's what most people don't realize when the credits roll. You just got incepted. The entire film is a demonstration of its own thesis. Nolan didn't just make a movie about planting ideas. He planted one in you while you watched. And the seed is brilliant in its simplicity.
Dreams, they feel real while we're in them, right? It's only when we wake up that we realize something was actually strange.
That's it. That's the virus, not a complex philosophy, not a detailed argument about the nature of consciousness. Just one destabilizing thought that makes you question the boundary between dream and reality. And the proof that it worked? The spinning top. The film ends on ambiguity deliberately. Cobb walks away. The top spins. The screen cuts to black before you see if it falls. And in that moment, the audience does exactly what Cobb does throughout the film. They check their totem. They look for proof. They argue in the parking lot about whether he's still dreaming. But here's the inception. You're not arguing about Cobb anymore. You're arguing about the nature of reality itself. The film made you apply dream logic to your actual world. It made you question whether your own experience can be trusted. It made you wonder, even for a second, if there's a difference between a reality that's real and one that just feels real. That's why people leave the theater looking at their own lives differently, checking for inconsistencies, wondering about the substrate of their existence. The film didn't convince you of anything. It just planted a seed that grows on its own. Inception is literally a movie about inception happening to you. And the most resilient parasite? The idea that you can't fully trust what feels true. That's the infection. And now you can't eradicate it.